Hey, everybody, got a great episode today. I got Paige Drews on today, and she came via LinkedIn. Basically, I had sent out a request, about a month ago for the best salespeople out there, nominated by other salespeople, and Paige's name came up several times by several different people. I got her on the calendar, and now we have her on the show. I think you're really going to enjoy this because we go through her whole story. And the things that I learned from it, I think everyone's going to really appreciate how she basically came from nowhere and climbed to be number one at several different companies, which is really something that matters a lot because I've seen people go from one company to another company and just not have success. And they just fit into one type of sale and they can't adapt. But Paige has been able to do that at several different companies. And I think you're really going to enjoy this story. I'll sum it up at the end. Before we dive in, I want to make sure you're checking out covideo, covideo.com, where I get to use video emails. They now have a Chrome plugin that allows you to record it right in your browser and send it right off an email. It's so much more engaging. Actually, I'm starting to get video emails and I'm compelled to play them. You see the little happy face there and you go, what's this person got to say? I don't know what they want. I don't know what, and they're smiling. So you hit play and all of a sudden it's much more engaging. Even when you get a video via text, it's just so much more engaging than the words, than the textual words. So make sure you're checking that out. And guess what? The training classes are cooking. Make sure you check them out. I put the details of the courses, the frequently asked questions, in the show notes. You can check them out there. You can also get a time on the calendar if you're serious about it at b2brevenue.com. Just hit the training tab. There's a calendar link in there. You can pick a 15-minute slot to ask any question you want. I just ask that you be serious, not just, what's the website? Okay, please be serious. Please have listened to at least 5 episodes of the podcast where you get a sense of, hey, this is guys talking about how I sell or the market that I have to sell into. Let's get into the interview and I'll sum it up at the end. Hey, Paige, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Hey, Brian. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm actually head of sales for a company out of San Francisco. I'm based in Austin, Texas, called Indio Technologies, where I run the sales department, selling a insurance agency solution platform that helps streamline workflow efficiency as well as tackling a really difficult subject of customer experience, which is a top priority for, I'm sure you have these conversations all the time. Customer experience is one of those hot button topics. It's a really difficult one to attack from a tangible aspect. So finding it to be super rewarding. I have a young team here and we're in high growth phase.
Is the sales team based in Texas or San Francisco?
Yep. So the sales team is all based here in Austin, Texas. We do have one superstar sales rep who focuses on our enterprise accounts, who's in San Francisco, and he's kind of a jet setter. So I say he's in San Francisco, but man, it's hard to catch him there on a weekly basis.
Yeah, cool. Hey, how'd you get interested in sales?
You know, my story of being interested in sales was one that I'm sure so many of your listeners will probably empathize with. I found myself in sales. I had to reinvent myself several years ago, like a lot of people end up finding they need to do, and was looking to get back into the career world after having taken some time off, having children, as well as running my own business. Realized, man, where is my resume going to really be accepted? I started in medical research. I ran a family farm that was successful for a long time.
So sales is the natural progression.
Yeah. And I worked in human services. I worked for some nonprofits for the city of Boston. I did all these things and I'm like, geez, how do you put that stuff on a resume that commands money? So heard about a really cool startup called Main Street Hub, found a past alumni who was working there who gave me the address. And I literally walked in off the street with a self-made pitch looking for the senior VP of sales, whose name was Scott Leese, and tried to get around as sales manager to get in to talk to this guy, and come to find out my pitch to talk to the SVP was very, very similar to the scripting he had written for his sales team.
Oh, Scott's been on the show. Yeah.
I remember that. I remember that. He's not only my mentor, but he's also, I've told him many times, if I were to get married again, you're my best man. And if I die tomorrow, I expect a really good eulogy from you.
That's high praise. Now, you kind of skyrocketed your first company, or a second company, I should say.
Yeah. So that's another kind of a hot topic in the sales world is the importance of finding and attaching yourself, if at the hip, if by all means necessary, to really good mentors. And I come from a background that has been very positive for me to create and instill this love of constant learning. So my mother was a teacher for 40 years, has done some really cool things over the course of her career. She really instilled in me a love and desire for learning. And then I know where I'm getting fed. So as soon as I recognized that the leadership team that I was working for were solid, stand up and had their heads on straight and were going to go places, I fell right in line and, kind of modeled the way that I perform and work after those great leaders and really took advantage of the opportunities to be mentored by them.
And that's it, because I hear a lot of sales leaders, kind of the number one thing they're saying is coachability. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of salespeople kind of have this renegade or rebel or very fiercely independent view of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah. Well, I've got to say, I have been that person. And at times I definitely am. I'm definitely a stubborn, thick-headed person. But one thing that I do pride myself on is being able to step away from my emotions and look at raw numbers, look at the data, and kind of allow the opportunity to be proven wrong and to learn something new. My strength in doing so is the ability to have an open mind and to accept that, hey, I don't know the answer to everything, and this person is doing things really well. Something that I picked up from Scott Leese that I carry with me on a near daily basis is the opportunity to mimic and steal away from others that are doing it right and doing it better than you, a little bit of their mojo. And that was a phrase and a statement that he made to me several years ago that has made me a more coachable person, carrying around what I know to be a bit of a, like a lot of heavy hitting salespeople, a prideful and a righteous confidence, the ability to, hey, if I have to get myself into a humble place and I need to stay true to myself, I'm going to frame it in a way that I'm seeing someone be more successful. I'm going to steal a little bit of what I've got, of what they've got. And that was very insightful when he broke that down for me. And it allows me in my brokenness of not doing and performing of where I wanted to be, I'll just go steal from somebody else. And that feeds both sides, the pride, but also allows me to be coachable.
And that's it, because too many people kind of get really defensive and blame the product, the territory, the quota, the time of year, and they may be right, but that doesn't solve the problem.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's a place that I end up when I'm working with my coaches or with my, the people that I mentor and my reps and even in peer-to-peer conversation, and with my daughters, I'm a mother of 3 kids. When my back is against the wall, if I have to blame anything else, it puts me into a situation and it puts me in a place of victimhood. If you are able to blame anything else, then you are legitimately and very realistically setting yourself up to be that victim for the rest of your career. Even if it's just a mind talk of I will not be a victim, I have control over something. As soon as you take control of any piece that's going wrong for you, you take yourself out of victimhood and you're able to at least instill the things you know how to do. So I know that if everything is going wrong against me, if I can point, if I can own responsibility for the things that I'm doing poorly, I'm not a victim of my circumstances. I now have control to change my circumstances.
Yeah. I mean, that's great advice because, you can be victimized, but not a victim,
Mm-hmm.
because we all have bad days. Territories are never fair. It's impossible to do. Products are delayed. All these things, and let's face it, sales, we're up against a bunch of stuff. And if you let it get to you, you're going to get distracted and focused on that instead of how do you fix it and how do you get the deal done and how do you, crush your number.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, why did you choose to move up instead of just be a happily wealthy person?
Man, because I was a happily wealthy person for a long time. So, and it finally just got to be where I needed something more. So going back to that story, I had to reinvent myself. I don't know if you felt that earthquake, and I think it was around 2010, but the whole earth, it shook. It shook pretty visibly, and it was for about 20 minutes, nothing in this world was right. That was my world falling apart. My world fell apart, and I really did need to totally reinvent myself. And it was focused on building a foundation and creating that stability that had just been rocked beneath me. So for about the first 2 years, I was very happily a heavy hitter and a top producer at Main Street Hub. At 3 months into that career, Scott Leese pulled me into his office and he started, coaching me and trying to instill his own sales technique on me, saying, I think you really need to be in leadership. You're obviously destined for that. I think you'd be great at it. It would be fun to work together on something like that. And I looked at him like, you got to be crazy. So you're telling me take less money and add more responsibility because that's going to be fun? No, thanks. I appreciate it. Catch you later. And that continued on. He moved on to another company. I went a couple trips and was enjoying the high life and just playing. And I had definitely created that foundation. I followed him over to another company where I became one of their heavy hitters very, very quickly. And the conversations began again. And a few months into it, I started feeling like, yeah, I've got plenty of money. I was able to take a hiatus from working in general and just play because of the success I'd had. I needed more. So I went in and I had a conversation with him and he said, well, there are 3 things that you can do. You can refocus on where you are right now and get back to enjoying the money that you're making. You can go and find something totally different, proving that the companies that you've worked for previously have been willing to pay your talent this much money and command that someplace else and reinvent again. Or you can finally listen to me and just do what I know that you're going to be great at and be a leader. And so I went home and it was one of those conversations, I've had a few in my lifetime, that was just okay, that there are more than just the 2 options. There's a third here, but I think that he's right. And so I took him up on the offer and there was no turning back. It was going to be that direction. I told him I would be a leader and we were going to take these steps to get there. And then one day I was just like, I don't know if I want to do this at all. And he said, well, that stinks because I was literally about to call you and tell you I needed you to fill this position. I have one open. It needs to start like on Monday. And so I literally went from being a sales rep on the floor on a Friday to managing a team, a mixed team of tenured and rookie and some even brand new sales reps on a Monday. And we absolutely killed it. It was a great experience and I wouldn't have had it any other way.
And how long did it take to adjust to that? Because that is a major career change.
There wasn't an adjustment period. No, maybe I missed it. I was a sales rep on Friday and on Monday I was running a team and we didn't look back. It literally, there wasn't an adjustment period. I hit 90% to quota with a full team that first month. And the second month we hit quota and I was actually, I hate to say this, I missed my quota last month and I had to go back in my phone. It had been since March 31st of 2016 that I didn't hit a quota. And before that, it has happened so few times actually that it was August of 2015 that I missed a quota before that. So it's only happened a few times as a leader of a sales team that I hadn't. So that adjustment period, I don't know if it was just the open-mindedness or what, but I just kind of took to it like a duck to water.
You didn't feel out of place, because certainly I remember doing it, because you all of a sudden go from having your hands on the deal to working through other people, and that becomes difficult. It's hard not to take over. It's hard not to tell people what to do. It's hard to know that they're going to run into the wall and they're not listening to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you deal with all that?
Yeah, so those are absolutely all frustrations that I've experienced, and I absolutely have a tremendous amount of empathy for those who are having that situation, and I'm familiar with that feeling. But as far as it being an adjustment, there's another side of my life that I say all the time, in jest and in equal parts seriousness, that my role as a mother has been one of the greatest trainings of being able to be a successful leader and manager that I could have experienced. So that all of those things, you could have framed them in a parenting way. We could have been having a conversation on how to be a successful parent. And had we just changed this conversation, we wouldn't have known.
Your kids are much more mature.
Yeah, sometimes. Absolutely. Sometimes, even
more
at
reasonable.
that age. Yeah. But that's one side of it. The second piece of this, and I learned this, after being kicked and prodded by my mother, who, as a mother who wanted to swoop in and save, but had a good amount of reining in her own desires for how to control her very independent daughter. All she could do was talk to a blank face who nodded every once in a while. I finally listened to her, and she told me, you can't do all of this. No one's expecting you to be Superwoman. You're not. You are human. You need to ask and you need to get help. So anybody who's listening to this portion, I will say without a shadow of a doubt, the single greatest thing that I have done for my bank account, as well as my sanity, was the day that I submitted to automating and delegating absolutely every part of my life that didn't bring me tremendous joy. So that was a piece that I'd had in place for a good year and a half before moving into management. When I moved into management, it was a very easy transition to understanding I'm not going to run all of these deals through you. I'm not going to use this God voice whisper to pitch prospects all day long. I'm going to delegate that opportunity and that role to you. I will coach you. I will give you the tools, but I'm going to automate and delegate as much as I can. And it was something that if that was on a Monday, it's my first day as a leader and a manager. On Friday, I was doing the exact same thing, just in different parts of my life. So those two things helped me to kind of adjust. It's not that I never felt the frustrations or that they were ever more difficult or less difficult or that I don't deal with them now, but those are my two, support systems that have allowed me to not feel that burden of, whoa, that's an adjustment.
Now, as a leader, what do you look for in salespeople in general?
So the number one thing is something that we were just talking about, and that's the coachability. I need to, I need people who are going to take feedback and run with it. One of the things the conversations that I have early on in my sales training with people is that I need them to focus on the main priorities, the main objectives. And it's really telling, and it's also a good time to recognize this, when a salesperson will nod and be fully on board. And instead of focusing on the process, I'm a big Saban fan. I'm a huge process believer. Instead of focusing on that process, they still find themselves wanting to focus on just the deal and the results. And that leads to horrible outcomes. So when I'm looking for sales reps, as I am right now, I want to hear examples of how they were able to focus on the process and specifically maybe even like small wins. And then I want to hear their backup stories of illustrate for me how you've been coachable, illustrate to me how you've been able to learn things that were complex and break them down. And then the other side is how are you motivated? So I'm specifically looking for a few key motivational factors in anybody that I work with. I want to hear how they're motivated, and I have a good way of pushing people forward if our motivational components are kind of the same, if they're motivated in similar ways.
And what are those?
So I like people who are independently motivated to, this is something that Scott, Lisa, and I often talk about, that they're motivated by the fame and the glory of being the best. My experience has been that those who come in and when asked what motivates you, and a sales rep's answer is oftentimes, oh, money. I completely reject that answer, and then we can get to a real motivational factor. Those who end up saying, I want to be the best. I have this piece in me that just drives me to constantly be improving myself. Those tend to be my absolute rock stars. Those who just always have something to prove. And if that proof is grounded in a genuine desire to be a dominant and the undisputed best, those people bank. They just completely bank, versus the person who just wants, they want the better car than their neighbor.
Right. Yeah. The next big paycheck. Now, is that different than competitiveness, or is it the same? So my way of the fame and glory can be a way of being competitive. Like I obviously, like if I have a peer who's in a similar role to me, it has in my past turned me inside out to be better than my peer. But there's a great picture of Michael Phelps winning at the Olympics where he's in the midst of a stroke, the butterfly stroke, and the guy next to him is focused firmly on Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps is 100% driven and super competitive, but he's put that process before the end goal. His 100% competitiveness comes from, I am going to destroy this process and goal. And the person next to him who came in second is 100% committed to, I just want to beat that guy. Yeah. So it is a little bit different.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, there's not a person in this world who knows me closely who would not pick competitive in the top 3 adjectives when describing me. But there's a thin line. It's a definite one between being competitive with others versus being competitive with your own goals.
And I also think it's kind of a positive competitiveness among peers where there isn't backstabbing and divisive behavior.
Yep.
I get pushed up by pushing the other person down.
Exactly. Absolutely. And that I wanted to speak on that. I had just referenced there was a time in my life that I really did turn myself inside out, trying to be the absolute best amongst my peers instead of being competitive with my own goals. I was a gifted swimmer. I swam just with the practice team on A&M because I had an unhealthy bend towards beating everybody else. So I took myself out of being a competitor for the school just to swim with their training team instead. And I did that for about a year. And then when I got into the sales role, I wanted to be first all the time. And it ended up, I'd break myself. There are just times that, even if you're not going to be a victim to yourself and you're just victimized by circumstances, you're not always going to be the best. For those people who are intensely competitive and can't get beyond not being the best against their peers, it will break them. There are just certain things that you cannot get beyond. So I changed my focus to, I have to be in the top 5 in the entire sales organization every single month. So that gave me a little bit of wiggle room. And when I left the sales floor for Outbound Engine, I had the longest streak of being top 5 in the company history. So that was my way of like owning and being, well, you can't really dispute that too much, but I didn't turn myself inside out trying to be number 1. I don't think I was ever actually on that sales floor, to be 100% truthful. I don't think I was ever number 1, but I did dominate that top 5 longer than anybody else in the organization.
And that consistency is critical because the one hit wonder, the big deal, the bluebird, makes a lot of people look a lot better than they are, but that consistency is very rare. And
that's the second quality that I'm looking for in sales reps. Consistency. That was a turning point conversation that I had barefooted in an office with Scott Leese in the middle of I think it was in the Omni restaurant. I walked out of the office with him and left my shoes behind and sat there for a good hour and a half talking about consistency. And I am super consistent. It's one of my strongest value points, and it's the way that I also show loyalty towards people. If I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to follow through. I'm going to be consistent to my word. And that's what I look for. And I command and demand from those people that I work with.
Yeah, because too often I see people show up at the last 2 weeks of the end of the quarter, and not every quarter, but some quarters, and they get a big deal, but they weren't there every month and they weren't there every quarter.
Well, and from a leader speaking to, if I can take a minute to coach and mentor the people who might be listening today, the conversation that I had was with my leader who said, you matter to me because you are capable and you are a heavy hitter. When you are inconsistent and when you fall behind, even at the beginning of the month, and I'm counting on you to start off, you become my number 1 priority. And if you become my number 1 priority because you are someone I depend on, then you take my energy away from developing and creating other people who can at some point do what you're doing now, but are not yet there. And it put the ownership and the responsibility that, sure, before that conversation, I may have been inconsistent, but I was only hurting my own paycheck. I didn't really think about how it was impacting anybody else. But framed in that way, it was like, man, that is my responsibility. And I am a part of a team. And when I'm not consistent and I am counted on, then that takes the energy of someone who does actually need to be focused on some of these other yahoos that haven't been helping me the past 3 months. And I just need a break here, but it just ends up, hurting me in general.
Great. So let's talk about what you're doing today and what are you looking for as far as reps on your team?
Yeah. So what I'm looking for as far as reps on my team are those people who have those qualities. I want someone who's competitive, who's consistent, who's self-driven and motivated, who's a fast learn, that kind of thing. What I am doing right now is I am creating an SDR AE model sales team. We specifically sell to insurance agencies, a platform that improves customer experience as well as the workflow inefficiencies currently not addressed by the management systems and the other technology that they have available to them. It's a bit of a unicorn product in my experience. I've never had a sale that was more openly received. I get a ton of really positive feedback from both our customers as well as our prospective on what we're doing. Something that has been not a side project, but running alongside of just the day-to-day building out of this sales team is looking at how the industry specifically, how they build their businesses and how relationship bound this industry is, how much they rely on references from peers, how in touch and in tune with the industry trends they really are. I've been pitching to insurance agents for about 6 years. And now that I'm in this role, man, it's a great industry. I have so enjoyed hearing about how involved everybody is. They are huge, like I said at the beginning, listeners of podcasts and webinars, and super involved, and their conferences have been just a really fun time, unlike anything that I've been a part of other than the sales conferences. Yeah. Which are, those are hard to beat, but lots of energy and lots of excitement and a lot of sharing of innovative ideas. And it's an industry that is absolutely ripe for innovation and changes and getting up, things mixed up. And I love being a part of that. So that's what I'm doing right now. That's what I'm building and I'm a part of and what I'm looking for.
Is there any geographic requirement for those roles?
Yeah, you got to want to live in Austin, Texas, and deal with the heat just like the rest of the sales team.
You got great food, though, don't you?
Oh, my God. Yeah. So funny little side note, Austin has the highest ratio of independent restaurants to restaurants in general of any other place in the U.S. So if you want a good mix of food, you're not gonna find any place better than Austin, Texas. The other really amazing thing about Austin is that it is a absolute hub for great sales talent as well as opportunity. We're seeing a huge spike in growth of tech industry and companies moving and opening up shop. Having a place here in downtown, it's a really nice mix of, if you are willing and ready to work hard and you want to play just equally as hard, you've got a good 9 months to play hard outside at any given time without dealing with, something that you can't get over. If it's 110 degrees, we've got Barton Springs. I think it stays at like 68 degree water temp. Someone could probably correct me on that, but jump in a pool, whatever. Get to the lake. We've got tons of rivers. So it's a really great place, both for a meeting of minds and those minds who like to have a little fun on the weekends.
And where should people go if they're interested?
So they can reach out to me directly through LinkedIn. We've also got a job posting through Indeed, as well as right through the website. I think we've got a posting on Built in Austin because we are genuinely building this ship here in Austin. And they can even go to my website, useindio.com. We have an email address that you can send your resume in there.
It's nothing I like better than talking to great salespeople and learning from them. And let me sum up the 3 things that I took away from this was that need to be the best. And this can come in many different forms. And I think Pages is probably one of the best forms, the healthiest, where you don't have to necessarily beat somebody, but you just have to be better, more productive, more successful. So it doesn't have that negative consequence of one person winning and the other one losing. Well, I guess it does, but it's okay as long as you're the winner. But this is a common theme that I've seen throughout my career. It's something that has been in me. After I turned the recorder off, me and Paige talked about birth order. And I brought this up on some other episodes where I found like the oldest sibling tends to be a great manager, which Paige is one of them. I'm kind of I was a middle child. So the middle child always has to fight for attention and is always in kind of a competitive situation. And then the youngest is the most secure because the parents are trained. The older kids broke them in. And I think this is something that I've seen happen, and it doesn't mean you can't change. And I think that was my second theme that I got out of this, was that desire to become better, to not be a victim, no matter how many times you're victimized, because that happens in sales. Sales is a 24/7 rejection fest and roller coaster. We have these ups and downs, and boy, do I experience that. And we have to find some way to kind of keep our our mind on the rails and not let it flip out and not blame other people because it just doesn't serve us. We got to learn from it, do better, cooperate with people, and you'll get so much more out of people when you keep everything on the rails. You might get a knee-jerk reaction by flipping out, which we all have, but that doesn't really build, trust and camaraderie with people. So number 2 was really learn from others. And if you can get a mentor, I think it's great. It doesn't have to be some official connection. It can just be either a great salesperson or maybe a podcaster. And somebody that you can ask questions, get advice from, get some feedback, talk things through, show your work with, go over a deal, all of those things. That's why I'm trying to turn the training classes into more of a community by doing one-on-ones that I'm doing now. I've just started it. It's working out really well. People can schedule them. And that really, if you're looking for impact, it's really sharing what you're doing today with somebody else, getting some feedback so that you at least have a sense of its effectiveness, someone else's opinion. You get to look at it through someone else's eyes. Insanely effective. And with the office hours where people can get together and hear what others are running into and how they've resolved it. And it motivates you to hear other people having success with the approaches that I share with you, because it's really what's worked for me, and it's evolved, and it is evolving because the game is changing out there. So actually, number 3 was that victimization thing. And I hear it all the time. How can you not feel that in sales where, the territories are never fair, the comp plan's never fair, and when good things happen, it's because of us, right? Of course it is. We get a bluebird or something, it's because I was there at the time. Yeah. And we also get overlooked when things go bad. We always get blamed. Nobody ever blames the product, the territory, the timing, the economy. No one blames that. It's always the rep's fault. But we have to find a way of working around that. So it's not just mindset. And what I like talking about great salespeople is I don't want to hear the work hard bullshit. Yes, that's part of it. Okay. But there's 1 million people at Walmart and McDonald's and Starbucks and even Amazon making minimum wage or a little bit more now, working their butts off, working harder than all of us, but they're not having the success that they want. Why? Because it's not in the right place doing the right things. That's what I want to bring to you. Yes, you got to work hard. Check. Next, let's talk about what the great people do differently. And I think those 3 things of just wanting to be the best, not being happy until you are, really finding somebody to learn from. And the best person to learn from is your mistakes. And say, how do I prevent this from happening again? Instead of, it won't matter next time. Oh, it's a fluke, and then forgetting about it. How many times does that have to happen before you wake up to it? Because that's the difference between genius and everybody else. Geniuses can learn from others' mistakes and others' experiences, while the rest of us, we got to make it ourselves. And then the last one, don't be a victim. Quit blaming other people. Own it. Extreme ownership. That is the key to your success, because until you own it, you're not going to change. You're going to ask someone else to change. And guess what? That ain't happening. So make sure you're checking out the courses at b2brevenue.com. Under training, you can schedule a time with me. They're really blowing up. It's about an hour of fresh content being added per week, per course. And you can get one-on-ones to go through deals, to go through situations, whatever I can do to help you. That's what I'm here for. Let me be your virtual buddy there, sales buddy. Also, big thank you to everybody over on LinkedIn who shared, commented on my videos, my content, following the podcast page on LinkedIn, the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast page on LinkedIn. Check out the B2B Revenue Leadership podcast, as well as Sales Questions. They're popping 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. All your questions are going to be answered in there. Career questions, anything have to do with sales and working in sales. Also, Discover.org. Are you checking out Discover.org? It's crazy. I was talking to somebody Friday about how happy they are with it, and I'm glad they heard about it on the podcast. It's like having 200 people working on your territory every day, getting the information that you need to find reasons to call out to people and then how to call out to them and what channels they're on without you having to scour the internet. That's it. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode. And I really would appreciate everybody who goes onto LinkedIn, connects up with me or follows me there. If you happen to see some of my content flying by, if you could throw a little thumbs up or a comment or a share, I definitely appreciate it. It helps spread the word about the podcast. And make sure you're checking out my website, b2brevenue.com. You can get my free book on how companies make product selections. It's a real book. It is on Amazon, but I give it away for free. Just register there. It'll email you a link to it, and you can just download the PDF from there. Also, if you want to check out the courses, start the conversation, get the meeting, or closing the complex sale, and you have more questions about it, the short answer is there are video courses. You get access for a year, but it's also a community. What does that mean? You can ask questions anytime via voicemail or email. I answer them within a week, put them into the course. We have office hours every other week. It's an hour long course where you can I pick a topic, answer questions, you can ask questions. Also, you can schedule one-on-ones for free, and we just talk through your particular use case, and that gets shared with the course. So if you don't have time for office hours or the timing doesn't work, or you just want some more one-on-one help, that's all included for a whole year. So it's really a year to go from where you are to where you want to be. And so it's not just videos. It's not just knowledge. It's practice. It's getting feedback. You can send me emails. You can send me your presentation. I'll help you with anything that you need to close the complex sale or get the meeting. And you can check out them at b2brevenue.com. So that's it. I really appreciate it. And please tell somebody about the podcast and let me know if I can help you in any way. Oh, and you want to hear some results from the course? Well, here you go.
I love the approach. It's working for me just fantastic. If I sent you some of the emails, which I should, the conversations that I'm having with people, I think you'd be blown away because they're not really about work. Yeah. I've figured out if you can kind of get personal with them, like one lady, it's all about her family, kids. And then I sprinkled in a little bit around work, and she's LinkedIn, sending me messages on LinkedIn, photos of her family. No, I'm not even kidding. I should show this to you. You'd be stunned. I was shocked. And we're going to lunch on September 6th. And yesterday she shot me a LinkedIn message and said, "Hey, Ron, why don't we get on the phone and do a video call beforehand so our lunch isn't so awkward? We're like barely not meeting each other for the first time." Oh, holy cow, right? Like, this is unbelievable. So this is not the first time that this has happened. She's kind of an extreme, but I'm starting to figure out a pattern where I can actually make this a process, So
good. Yeah.
I'll show you that. So it's getting to that point. And every time I do this, I'm like, God, this is unbelievable, So,
and it feels better too, doesn't it?
Oh, Brian, let me tell you something. To be able to go to lunch with her, I'll even talk to her on the phone, right? We're going to talk about family, kids, work-life harmony, because I shared a thing with her from Bezos about work-life harmony. This is where the conversation will start. Now, at some point, we're both not stupid, right? We know we're going to talk about work. We know why we're both there. Right. But to kick it off this way is so much better. And to end that lunch with the last 5 to 8 minutes of telling, well, what are you guys doing with digital